Okay, great. Thanks again for joining us. This is Jody Patterson, Director of Client Development for Oasis Solutions. Welcome Melissa Craig from Avalera, who is going to be presenting our user session today, covering sales tax concerns for manufacturers, wholesalers, and distributors. Remember to stay to the very end. We are still going to have a drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. And Falana will be spinning the wheel at the end of this session, just like she has for all the rest of them today. So thanks, Melissa. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Jody and Oasis team. Thank you for joining us today. So we've got a jam-packed schedule for you. I am Melissa Craig. I am our Senior Manager with our Strategic Alliances team and based out of Atlanta, Georgia. So you'll hear a little bit of a Southern twang. Just wait till I have a cocktail or two and it gets even more pronounced. But I have been with Avalera since 2016 and really have a passion about sales tax and sales tax automation. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how it's really going to affect you as wholesalers and distributors. So we're going to talk about the current environment, some of the common challenges around compliance for tax exempt sellers, some considerations to be concerned about in an audit, and then of course some of the best practices for getting compliant. So let's chat about the current environment. It's really been interesting how the environment has changed over the course of the last couple of years. The staffing shortages, just the sheer demand of product and not being able to get product or having your inventory just explode in terms of people wanting your product suite. So we've seen a lot of this really having some significant tax obligation. New products, are you expanding your product suite? What is the product taxability around those? Are you having to go into new suppliers? Are you getting some of those exemption certificates? We're seeing a great number of suppliers merging and acquiring other people. Are there name changes, address changes that you might have to deal with in terms of new exemption certificate management? And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but certainly we're just seeing a plethora of changes when it comes to this. So more refunds. What is your client experience with refunds? And also your treasury experience around refunds. So we're going to be speaking a little bit more about that a little bit later. And then of course, omni-channel and online sales. So we are now just seeing an enormous growth in that omni-channel market. So certainly those are some big challenges, especially around the shortage of staffing. And we're going to talk about how that can affect your Nexus, or that obligation to collect sales tax based upon your business practices in a certain state. So before, we've seen people really trying to hire in a geographic area that is that just has a Nexus obligation maybe in 1 or 2 states. Now with staffing shortages, you might have employees across the country, many different states. If those are permanent employees or even 1099s, those could establish Nexus, that physical presence in a state, to make you register and collect taxes within a state. So certainly that's a huge area. So let's talk about some of the 4 common compliance. And again, the first is Nexus. So that obligation to collect sales tax based upon your business practices within a state. So we've all seen economic nexus, the Supreme Court decision. We're not going to go through that in depth right now, but certainly economic nexus has been a huge trigger event in terms of collecting, remitting, and having to register in certain states. But again, a lot of tax exempt manufacturing distribution, Melissa, it doesn't affect me. I'm completely tax exempt. I don't have any product taxability issues. That is really just not the case. So economic nexus, you know, we've seen it, we see it here in terms of the thresholds, but where I like to spend some time with manufacturers and distributors are where in these economic nexus states they actually count exempt transactions in those state thresholds. So you'll see here, exempt sales are in orange. So that is the vast majority will have exempt sales both in services and tangible goods in these orange states. The non-exempt sales you see in blue, and then of course the purple is the mixed. And what does the mixed mean? In many of the cases, California, New York, they actually include tax exempt transactions of goods in those thresholds, but not services, not exempt services. So that's what we mean when we say it's mixed. But you can see here, if you have transactions and sales, exempt sales, those absolutely could trigger economic nexus within these states. So we talk to customers just daily on their tax obligations with most of their taxes being exempt. So this is something that I just want to touch upon actually in the lower, this not tracking nexus and paying sales tax twice. If you are buying certain goods from out of state and they don't have nexus in that state, they might not be charging you sales tax. You might be having to self-assess use tax. But we're seeing a lot of folks getting those triggers. And so if your vendors trigger nexus in these states and start charging you sales tax, and you're still not catching those and self-assessing use tax, you might be paying sales tax twice. So really understanding your suppliers, and they might not have a good exemption certificate process themselves to where acquiring exemption certificates from you as a vendor. So certainly something to keep an eye on. It just makes it very, very complex. So then let's talk about exemption certificates. This is kind of the holy grail with tax exempt customers. And one of the challenges is still this being a manual process and a very paper-driven process. During the last couple of years with the pandemic and the digital transformation revolution, this is certainly one of those automation projects that a lot of folks have really tackled, but we're still seeing it daily as another project to tackle in terms of digital modernization. So one of the things that we really want to make sure is that your exemption certificates, that document that allows you to not collect sales tax, needs to be up to date and correct with the correct information. So, and easily available across the different channels that you're selling into. So one of the main things that we've seen is as people are going, and we'll talk about this in a second, as people are going to that omni-channel, the e-commerce, are you able to collect as well as just make sure that the customer experience is a good customer experience by having a digital and automated process for your exemption certificates? So being able to collect across many channels, whether it's fax, email, e-commerce system, how you turn that into actionable items, making sure that you know when the exemption certificates are actually expiring. When do I need to get a new one from my vendors? And making sure that the exemption certificates, you don't have to think about it that much. Your customers and your people need to know that they're utilizing the right exemption certificates for the elimination of errors. Because the burden of proof is on you. You've got to get those pieces of paper, of course, from your suppliers, but ultimately the burden is on you as the vendor not collecting sales tax to justify via that piece of paper why you're not collecting sales tax. This is where the fines and penalties can be significant. And sometimes we overlook that the customer experience. We just had a situation here at Avalera where we needed an exemption certificate from a vendor. They actually had the wrong name. They had merged with another company. They had combined names, and it took, embarrassingly, way too long to get that exemption certificate corrected from the vendor so that we can in turn submit an exemption or submit an invoice without the tax on it. That customer experience needs to be a topic of conversation of what that life cycle is going to look like, because if you have to consistently credit rebill, that is just not the customer experience you really want to look at. So the omni-channel. So manufacturers and distributors, they have come into this digital revolution as well. And not only on e-commerce, but also the possibility of not just being a B2B seller, which is what we're all traditionally used to, but also possibly looking at that B2C. Are you selling to the direct end users? And do you have the processes in place to really provide a good user experience? So, you see here, approximately 20% of manufacturers have their own e-commerce channel for selling to the end users. That is huge. And that's only gonna get more and more, especially as buyers are being more sophisticated and wanting that digital experience for procurement. You see 70% are open to make new purchase in excess of $50,000. This is really, this is significant change in what we've seen in the past. And we're not going to get into this as in depth because consumers use tax certainly could be a whole session in and of itself. But one of the things that I just like to point out is consumer use tax is a self-assessed tax. It's not transactional, which is kind of where we can really put a lot of the rules and regulations and automation. Consumer use has to be done by a human being, which one, introduces error. This is a very time-consuming process. It can be very cumbersome in terms of the state requirements. They're changing, and it's 100% non-revenue generating activity. So we're spending a lot of time on activities that are not centered to the core business, and they're very cumbersome and prone to human error. It also is one of the largest audit risks. So we always like to kind of, speak about this consumer's use tax. And if you have any in-depth questions, we would love to talk to you a little bit further. But we're just going to touch upon it very briefly in today's session. So what are some considerations in terms of an audit? So whether we like it or not, manufacturing, wholesale distributors, that is a top target. I don't like to provide FUD to customers. It is out there. When you could be audited. It might never happen to you, and I hope that it never happens to you. But if it does, it's certainly one area that you just want to be ready for. And the most common mistakes that we really talked about: Nexus oversights. Where do I have that obligation to collect? Exemption certificate management. Do I have correct exemption certificates? And then the missed reporting of use tax. This is going to be an interesting time because I just read a study that a lot of the auditors, they have that 4-year look back. And since the South Dakota versus Wayfair decision, it's been just over about the 4-year mark, or we're coming into the 4-year mark. So this could be an interesting time, but it's always good to really take a look at what your processes are. So this is just a few other things that we like to share in terms of, 14% of all participants have had an audit in the last 5 years. I hope that you're not one of those 14, but certainly you want to be prepared. And an average of about 35 hours to oversee. If you have those exemption certificates and all of your data digitized and available to auditors, one of the things we have noticed is auditors are working from home as well. And that's been a productivity enhancement for the auditing community as well, because, auditors will find a way. This is a huge area of the sales tax revenue for different states. And we are seeing some proficiencies and enhancements in their auditing processes because of the digitization of documents. So this is another, just a few stats around this. And we actually just commissioned a study. This is a 2021 study. I think we had a stat earlier that was from 2017. This is just from 2021 in terms of the cost for monthly compliance for companies with 20 to 500 employees. This is a nice chunk of change. Oh my goodness, 17,000 for the cost of manual tax compliance. So this is a huge area of concern. And then of course, what are some of the things that people are catching in these audits? Rates errors, exemption certificate management, late filings, failure to register in a Nexus state. You know, we see a lot of Nexus studies that we're doing right now, either by your accounting partners or by Avalera can assist with this. Understanding where you have Nexus is such a big area of concern. And then of course, consumer use. So that very high error rate in terms of humans conducting the self-assessments. So one of the things that you can do to avoid having some major issues is conduct your own audit. It's kind of know thyself, know what your processes are. Where are your vulnerability parts or points? So do you have the proper documentation? Are you able to provide that to an auditor in an expeditious fashion? So being able to understand where your vulnerabilities are is a huge area of concern. So again, you see here where exempt sales are included in the economic nexus threshold, exempt services, but what are the 5 steps to managing tax compliance? Know thyself, know where you have nexus, register and collect and remit sales tax in those states. Collect the correct sales tax. If you have exemptions, then collect and maintain the accurate exemptions, and then remit on time to the correct taxing authorities. You would think that would be easier said than done, but we had an issue just this morning with Colorado. Colorado is very cumbersome and complex when it comes to their jurisdictional taxing authorities. So really remitting on time and to the right jurisdictions are, of course, the key to a good compliance solution. And I wouldn't be here if obviously Avalera, you know, can't assist in this end-to-end compliance solution. From exemption certificate management, we've got Cert Capture that is currently our exemption certificate management, that bi-directional, being able to request and receive certificates effectively, being able to determine your taxability. Do I have Nexus in a certain state? Yes or no? If I have Nexus, do I have a valid exemption certificate on file so that I can collect zero tax? And then what am I selling? So what is the product taxability at that location? Being able to determine that in sub-second response time, all from the cloud, all being maintained effectively is certainly what Avalera does and what we do well. And then the treasury piece. Are you filing and remitting to those state governments effectively and correctly? And Avalera can assist in all three of these different situations. So what are some of the takeaways? I actually am doing pretty good on time. I'm actually proud of myself. So what are some of the takeaways? Supply chain issues. How are those impacting what your core business processes are? What are the common compliance, economic nexus, exemption certificates, omni-channel, reporting consumers' use, and just be ready for an audit. Know thyself in making sure that you, heaven forbid, have to get into an audit, that you understand where your vulnerabilities are and make the changes appropriately. One of the nice things, one of the other key takeaways is you've got a great partner in Oasis. They've been an amazing partner to us in Avalera over the last, you know, however many years. Jody is second to none when it comes to understanding the business and the obligations. She works hand in hand with our team over the last, you know, few years. So we've got kind of a dynamic duo of the folks to assist. So really having the questions, if you want to have a discussion, get with Jody. She can really make some introductions and have a discovery call. Just see where we can possibly help. So those are the main takeaways I would really want you to to identify going forward. You're going to get this deck. So please let me know if you have any questions. And if so, get with Jody, she'll get with our team, and we'll just get a discussion going. So thank you so much. And I'm ready for questions. What kind of questions do we have?
Hey, Melissa, before we jump into that, I just want to say thank you so much. I had no idea you were going to be bragging on our relationship, but thank you. I didn't think to, I just now thought to mention this, and this is new news that we should have probably covered in the next session at the very opening of our Sage user sessions today. Oasis Solutions has fairly recently, at the end of last year, we've become certified as an Avalera implementation partner. So that means, what that means for our customers is that we no longer have to necessarily hand you off to the Avalera team to implement these some of these portions of the sales tax solutions that Avalera provides. So if obviously, as Melissa said, if it is something that is concern to your business and you want to learn more about the sales tax solution offerings from Avalera, reach out to me directly. I think you all have my email address so far, jody@oasissky.com. And let's see if we have any questions. We have a few questions popping in here, but before we get into the Q&A, Falana, would you please launch our poll?
Jody, we actually don't have a poll today.
Oh, I thought we had a poll.
Not
Okay.
for this session, no.
My apologies, I've gotten
No
confused
worries.
on which poll there. Okay, so let's launch straight into the questions then. The first question is surrounding implementation. Go figure, since I was just talking about that. How long does it take to implement Avalera?
You know, it really does vary based upon the number of exemption certificates you might have. If we have a couple of different flavors, we always love for you to utilize our Certified Implementation Partner Program through Oasis, because they do know your business so well and they can really step-by-step walk you through some of this good stuff. If you go through an Avalera session, it's an assisted go live. So it does depend on you know, how much time you can really take. Jody, it could take as quickly as a few weeks to, you know, 6 months, depending upon your business. It really does depend. Jody, do you want to take that at all, or?
Yeah, I can just back Melissa up on that one. So yeah, if it's a simple implementation and there's not a lot of complexity surrounding inventory items or sale items or service items that have variable taxability depending on how they're used or what states they're used in, and things of that nature. If it's more straightforward, then implementation can go pretty quickly. I would say 8 weeks is probably about as fast as we would want to move, because we want to make sure that we get it right, especially with the product mappings into the sales tax codes, etc. More complex implementations can take 4 to 6 months, as Melissa mentioned. It also is dependent on, are you already registered in those states? Are we really just implementing sales tax, or do we have to do registrations as well, exemption certificate management, etc.? So I think we are ready to spin the wheel. So Falana, if you'll take the screen and spin the wheel, please. Spin to win for the Amazon gift card.
Stop sharing.
I got it. Absolutely. We do have a wheel. So hold on, let me go ahead and spin. Let's
Good luck,
see.
everyone.
Looks like our winner for this session is Rebecca H. So it looks like that is Rebecca Hay with HPL Cold Storage. So woohoo, and congratulations to Rebecca. I will get your $25 Amazon gift card to you, Rebecca.
Great. Well, thanks again, Melissa, for the presentation. And if anybody needs to talk about sales tax, just explore options and learn more about it, reach out to me, and I'll be happy to connect you with Alex Lyons, who is our dedicated rep at Avalera. I've worked with Alex for, I think, 6 years now. So yeah, we really do have a great partnership with Avalera. So look forward to seeing you at our final session of the day, which starts in 3 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Beautiful. Thanks, y'all.
Bye, Melissa.